Welter years ago at a comment. We had a mutual friend's wedding, and then we have this common connection of Young Life. So we are both a part of this organization. So outside of being a college professor, Dr. Welter also helps this great nonprofit. We're going to talk about nonprofits next, that engages with high school, middle school, and college students, and kind of helps support and encourage folks along the journey through those events. So I'm super excited to have him here with us. He is part of our launch to our Hamilton Remix project. You have a survey to fill out. The word survey is a link when you open that up in Schoology to complete today to help create your teams, because on Monday you'll come in, you'll have a team, and you'll get started working on your small business idea. This sheet of paper they picked up when you walked in is a little bio about Dr. Welter, who is a professor at Miami University, and I just copied and pasted that from their website. So that is genuine information. If you want more, I think there's more on Dr. Welter there. What should I call you?
Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a little. So if you didn't pick up a piece of paper.
I mean, I'm technically a doctor, but I'm not like a real doctor that helps people. I'm just a doctor that has a PhD.
Professors. Lots of professors have PhDs.
Professor works.
Professor, okay.
Chris is fine too.
There you go. You can call him Chris. And you have his contact information on the back if you have any questions. I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm going to give over the floor to Chris.
Okay, so like Mrs. Power said, I almost call her Katie. You know the Power, but I might call her Katie. I'm Chris Welter. Call me Chris. It's probably easier. If you want to call me professor or sensei or coach, whatever. My phone calls me sensei. Yeah. That's what Siri calls me, so I like that. So I gave you all, or somebody gave you a note card in front of you. What I want you to do, I'm going to give you a little bit of my background here in a second. That's important, well not important, but might be helpful. But on that note card, what I want you to write is just totally anonymous. You're just going to write the answer to this question. Why are you here right now? So however you want. And then when you're done with those, we're going to pass them all to this side, and then I'm going to have Mrs. Powers collect them and look at them. So, just write whatever. It's completely anonymous. I just want to know your thoughts on why are you here right now, like with me. Not like why are you here on this planet. We'll get to that in a minute. So, why are you here right now in this class? My background is, some of that's on there, and that's geared toward, people who might Google us at Miami and things like that. But my personal history of what I do with life and things like that is I'm a professor, which means some of the time I do research, some of the times I teach. What I teach about is business strategy right now, but I've taught about a lot of different things. What I've always done research on is entrepreneurship, which is a big word that some people think are really cool, and some people, it's kind of an uppity word. It's really hard to spell, and I have to type it a lot, which thank God for autocorrect. But entrepreneurship is basically starting something new. And we can apply it to all sorts of different areas, and I'm sure a lot of you have done things that are either entrepreneurship adjacent or in that realm or interacted with people like that before. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is a little bit of what works and what doesn't work for most people who step into entrepreneurship. The beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is that, unlike a lot of other places, a little bit of training goes a long way. The biggest difference with entrepreneurs that are successful versus not is really a willingness to learn. Because if entrepreneurship is really doing something new, there's some things we can teach and take and apply, but some aspect of it's going to be new, right? And so if it's something new, you've got to learn. I was looking around a lot of the quotes up here, and I don't know if I just like Mrs. Power's mindset in general, but I'm like looking at some of these of like, if it's important, you will find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. Mistakes are proof that you're trying. Like, I don't know if you guys have probably been immune to the quotes around here, but like, so much of that is wrapped up in entrepreneurship and in kind of what we're going to talk about today. So if you're done with those, like, why are you here things, again, just pass them all this way, and then you can fold, you can do whatever you like. Mrs. Power's going to look at it and give us some feedback on a general thought process of why you think you're here. But as we're getting to that, let me ask you this. What do you think, there's two general, we can break this down a lot of different ways, but there's two general reasons why most new businesses fail. Take a guess what you think one of those two big reasons why most new businesses fail. Any guesses? Yeah.
They didn't budget their stuff out well.
Yeah, they didn't budget their stuff out. So money, real simply, is one of them. Like, and it's not always necessarily. She's got a few before that was passed down. It's not always necessarily that you don't have your business doesn't make money. Sometimes it's that you don't have money at the right time. So think about this. Like, if any of you worked a job and you get paid like 2 weeks later, you ever have something you want to buy while you're waiting for that money? The same thing happens if you're running a business, right? So if I'm running a business and I go out and I sell a bunch of stuff and everybody swipes a credit card and I get paid 3 weeks later, but like I gotta pay my employees 2 weeks later, I need to have enough money not for just this week, but I also have enough money for next week and the week after that to make sure all the money works out. And so one of the big reasons is money or money management. So we call it a lack of capital, if you want to sound like you are well educated and whatnot. But basically, lack of money. We can't figure out how to make the money work. That's one of the main reasons. Anybody guess what the other main reason is?
I feel like they don't know how to run it.
Okay, so that kind of fits in, that can work in within the money piece. Usually we will learn that through trial and error. So that's not as big a reason as why we go down.
They don't know how to market themselves.
That's in the right area. So what do you mean when you say don't know how to market themselves?
Like, they don't know how to promote their business in a way that would get customers.
Okay, so that's in the right direction, but I'd probably frame it a little bit differently.
They don't have good communication skills or people skills.
Okay, that can hurt, but that's not the main reason. Usually we get to work that out a little bit because we have to or we go under. Any other guesses? It's along those lines of marketing, but it's a little bit different twist. Target audience, maybe?
They don't really, like, they don't just, like, go for their idea. They, like, kind of chicken out and, like, step back and don't go for it fully.
Well, actually, you could argue the biggest reason people don't succeed is they don't ever start in the first place. So I kind of took that one off the table. These are the people who've already gotten started. But one of the biggest reasons people don't go do something is because they don't go do something, which sounds not all that intelligent, but that's the main reason most of us don't start businesses. We don't want to, or we're too afraid, or something like that. So you guys are talking around it here, but this is the one part that people get tricky is we think it's like people aren't aware that what I have is the thing. What really is the problem is that I've built something that I like and I want, not something that they like and they want. And so it's a matter of, what we say is you never want to build something no one wants. You can design, engineer, create, make the most amazing thing that you love and no one else in the world likes, and you're not going to be able to make a business out of that. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't go make those things. By all means, enjoy them, but you're not going to have a business out of it, right? I joke, when I lived with a bunch of guys in college, and we played wiffle ball on the side of our house and kept stats, and it was absurd. Like, we spent like 3 or 4 hours. This is before video games were as good as they are now. But we spent like 3 or 4 hours outside playing wiffle ball on the side of our house. And we got to the point where we created our own stat sheet so we could keep track of it. It was a little bit modified. We're like, we should make like a business that makes these stat sheets. And then we realized no other person on earth cares one rip about what we're doing. We could make these, but it'd just be for the 5 of us. And so like that's not a business that anybody, like we could make them as cool as we wanted to do. We could design them so well, we could figure it all out, but nobody would care. And that's the thing, is figuring out, instead of thinking, this is my great idea that I'm going to now inflict on the world, and hopefully they like it, and I can tell them how much they should like it, the flippant mindset that really helps us is trying to think, what's the problem out there that needs to be solved? What's the issue that people have? Because if I build the right thing, people will come find me. You guys ever gotten online, like Google's, like, there's got to be somebody who made blah, 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 whether it's like a specific phone case style you want, or like a carrying bag for your laptop or something like that. You ever gone and like, this has got to be out there, let me find it on Amazon, and you come up short? You're like, there's other people doing that for all kinds of problems. And instead of us thinking we should go out and say, this is what the world needs, we should probably start with asking, what do they need? Mrs. Powers, did you get through some of those? Oh, you got a few more?
Anyone else have one?
So do you have any highlights for us? Any commonalities you saw on that?
Sure, we have to get advice for upcoming projects.
Okay, that's good.
Also because this is a great learning opportunity.
You guys are much nicer than my students. I do this with my students.
Here's a good one, thank you. Because I'm in statistics, which is after Algebra 2 at Butler Tech. And
Amen.
we're learning about entrepreneurship today, and I love dance. So that's why I'm in Butler Tech.
That's That's good.
That's the answer.
No.
I would argue everyone loves dance, we just don't feel comfortable enough to do it. I'm terrible. But if you think about it, I think the same way like when you like something and you think it's funny, you laugh, you can't control it. I think if you get really excited, you dance, you just don't want to do it in front of other people because you might dance like I do, which is goofy and dad-like. And in high school, I'm sure that's not appropriate.
A lot are along the same lines. Specifically, I'm at Butler Tech to indulge in my passion and hopefully start my business down in my hometown.
Awesome.
So,
Those are some great answers. And like I said, you guys are much more kind than what I get. When I do this the first day I'm at classes in Miami. I did it last 2 weeks ago. We started in Miami. And we did this with my students. And whichever one of those we start with, the real reason you're in a place. There's a tool called the 5 whys. Anybody ever heard that phrase before? The 5 whys. So the idea behind the 5 whys, you know it, or have you heard it before? Okay. So the idea behind the 5 whys is you ask yourself why 5 times to get the real reason why you're doing something. So why are you in school? Why are you here? It's because it's in my statistics class and I have to be here right now. Government. Wait, is this your government class?
No, government as in the
Oh,
American government.
yes. So why do we have to be here? Because the government makes us here, right? You're required to be in school. Now why does the government make you here right now? This is why, would this be why number 3? We can go down any of these paths and probably get to the same spot. Why do you think?
Technically, the government doesn't specifically make us go here. They technically make us go to our home school. So why did we choose to go to Welter?
Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
Because this one might be preferable to that one if we want to put it that way. So, but you're still required to go. So either way, we can get down the same path. So we can imagine if, why are you here? We're required to at some level, or this was one option we can choose. So why would you be required to be in one of these options right now? They don't want us to be dumb.
Well, they didn't want us to be done, they should have improved the education system, that's another.
That's a longer can of worms that we can't,
But the
long
reason-
can of worms, yeah.
The other reason is because, the American government found that they needed to actually educate their future factory workers to be able to function properly.
That's fair historically, but we're still holding on to it for some hopefully other reasons than just making you factory workers. Although we do have you sitting in lines and have you a place where we can move things down and stuff like that.
Grade A.
But so we don't want you. We can say we don't want you to be stupid, but then the big question is why don't we want you to be stupid, or why do we want you to be educated? There's lots of educated people who are stupid, by the way. That's a question of whether or not you can get out of school without actually learning something. You can still leave places like this being stupid. That's a little bit more on you than trying to your teachers.
There's statistics show that high school graduates actually don't develop proper object orientation.
Okay. You've done a lot of research on school, it seems like. Okay.
Like, don't get me started.
So let's finish this 5th why. Why don't we want you to be stupid, or why do we want you to be educated? Why do we want you to come through this process? Okay, so doing basic things, but also being able to start business, I think that works. Why else do we not want you? Why else do we want you to not be stupid, to not be uneducated?
To improve the life of yourself and others, so the people around you are community.
I would say, here's how I would sum that up. I would agree with you 100%. We want you to change the world. Like, you look out right now, and you guys get a better view than almost anybody else who's been in these desks in the last few years. The world's on fire, right? Like, the world is jacked up. And I don't care how many great teachers or people around you that you look up to, or whether it is entrepreneurs and you think Elon Musk is awesome, whether it is athletes or anybody else, you can look around and say, there's still a lot more to be done. And none of us can do it on our own. And the trick is also, like, there's a lot of things you guys care about I don't care one lick about. And there's some things I love that you don't care one lick about. And the point of this, the reason I bring this up is why you're here right now and why I'm here right now. The reason I said yes to this, because honestly I could be doing other things. I'm excited to be here because I want to help you change the world. Now, I'm not going to do a whole lot in 30 minutes, but I hope to give you a little bit of a push, a little bit of a spark to move in that direction. And I hope that you care about that enough, that it's not just filling out a few blanks on a sheet, but that you might look at this and say, whatever you look out, you're like, that's jacked that's a problem, I hope you look at that and think, maybe I can do something about it. Because there's more than enough problems for all of us in here, right? And that's what I want to think about in this next 20, 15 minutes here. So, I'm looking at your notes, not my notes. Here's what I want to hit on. We talked a little about why most business fails. Why most businesses fail. The first one is building something no one wants. And so we need to switch our mindset from what do I like, what do I want to do, what do I want people to think about. We need to switch our mindset into, instead of what I can do, what do people want, what do people need. That's how we want to change our thought process. And so a lot of that can start with just talking to people, right? In a lot of cases, what we're hopefully going to line up with is a nifty little Venn diagram, which you've probably done this enough in statistics, but you would have an idea about a Venn diagram. But here's the things I like, here's the things they need, and in here is where I can find something that I care enough about to go do something, but people care enough about that they would actually want to pay me for it, or at least be involved enough to keep the business going. And so some of the ways to think about that is just thinking through, like, it might be walking around, whether for your project, walking around downtown Hamilton, or looking at, like, here are the things that are here, but what's missing? Here are the things that are here, but they're not quite what people need. And remember, not just you, but other people. And one thing I would tell you is, with entrepreneurship, this is just a good reminder, is people will lie to you. Now, your friends will probably lie to you more than strangers will. And the reason I say that is because you may have a good idea, you say, hey, isn't this a good idea? And your friend's like, yeah, I'm not going to crush your dreams, but that's right. They won't say that last part out loud, but that's the thought process. And so talking to people who aren't you or your friends will help you have a real perspective on what people might actually want or need. And once you get down that road a little bit, then we start figuring out, that's the first step, is making sure we're building something people want. And that could be a step or a process we're in for a long time. A long time, maybe 5 minutes, not 5 minutes, that's not a long time in anybody's book. Well, if you're my 4-year-old, that's a very long time. But a long time may be a few conversations, a long time may be months and months and months. You don't have months for this project, but a matter of thinking of, let's make sure we're building something people want first. Then once we get through that, we get into a thing that in entrepreneurship we call feasibility analysis. And feasibility analysis is real simply, can I make enough money so that I can keep the lights on? Can I bring in enough so that I can pay for all the things I need to pay for to keep going? Because if I throw in my own money, or I borrow some money, or get something started, that's great. But unless I can count on that revenue source forever, I'm going to need to get money from something else I'm doing. Now, there's lots of ways you can do this. Like, one is, your typical, like, open a coffee shop. I sell coffee, I bring in money for that, I charge more than it costs to pay for the coffee. That difference helps me pay for the lights, pay for the building, pay for the employees. There's also nonprofits that exist out there. Like Young Life, like Mrs. Powers and I both volunteer with, have a model that people donate money to them. And that those donations help fuel things. Churches are often run this way, but there's lots of other nonprofits. Like, yeah.
Animal shelters.
Animal shelters, exactly. I don't know what Sojourner Recovery Services is. I see that big check up there, but my guess is that they're a nonprofit. And so if you've got different things like that, you can have ideas that we're not going to do something that makes money, we might do something that spends money, but are there people who are willing enough to support that cause that they would be willing to donate money to help support that cause? Whether it's animal shelters, whether it's Sojourner, whether it's anything else along the way. So, thinking about that, there's a couple of tools I want to put in your toolbox from the entrepreneurship perspective. So one side is figure out what people want. That's step one. Step two, to help solve that problem of we run out of money or we don't manage the money right, you've got to think about two main concepts, right? Money coming in, we often call that revenue. Money going out, we call those expenses. This is real basic accounting. Has anybody ever had accounting before or talked about accounting before? It's super boring. No offense if you love accounting. Until you realize, it's super boring until you realize that that's the lifeblood of almost every company you interact with. It sounds really boring to think about accounting or accountants or stuff like that, but any good entrepreneur will tell you, you need a good accountant. And until you get to the point where you can afford a good accountant, you need to be an accountant. This is where, to me, a lot of folks, I feel like, I've had plenty of students who've been like, math, stats, I don't want to do that, I want to work with people. And we start pointing out, like, entrepreneurship, if you can't do the accounting, you're kind of in trouble. And So real simply put, if you want to think about what your revenue is, so the money coming in, you want to think about how much can you charge for something. So if you make, one of the ways we make mistakes a lot of times, let's say I could manufacture this. I can't. There's steel and stuff. I don't even know how that works. I probably watched a YouTube video on how these things are made because those are fascinating to me. But let's say I could manufacture this. How much is it? How much can I charge for it? One of the first problems we make, or one of the first mistakes we make, is thinking, well, it cost me $2 to make it, so maybe I should charge $3 for it. And a lot of you guys are in school for the arts, right? So, or all of you are in school for the arts, right? So if you think about how much does it cost you to make a painting? Probably not much. Well, it depends. Yeah. Forgive me for that. This is my naivete because I'm on the business side. I think of if I'm just literally using the cheapest paints I've got and painting it on some piece of paper, which is probably not the case for any of you. That's very inexpensive. At the same time, the right person who does that can be incredibly valuable. One of the things, I'll show you one of my friends from Georgia was an artist, or is an artist. I'll show you one of his paintings soon enough, and he would spend months on it. Now the actual inputs he would use was mostly, some paint supplies and whatnot. He would maybe spend a couple $100 on the things he would put together. But then he'd sell the painting for $20,000, $30,000. And I'm like, wait, you sell paintings for $20,000? This is my naivete again. I'm like, I buy posters. That's as far as I get. But he would see that he knew the value in what he put together that people would be willing to pay for. So it wasn't about the cost of inputs. It was about what people are willing to pay for something. And so as you're talking to people to figure out what they want, you want to start figuring out what they're willing to pay for. And so you think about apps you download on your phone. How many of you pay for apps on your phone? A few of you? How many of you look at an app that's like 99 cents and you're like, I get that for free? Right? That's our mindset. We're like, well, I can get a free version of that. That's what I'm going to do. On the other hand, if you think about businesses that are buying software that goes on things like this, they pay a lot of money for those things. And so thinking about the frame of reference, who's buying it, and how much they're willing to pay is a really important question. Now the other thing that's fun to think about is, once you know you've got a customer that might be willing to pay this, how many times are they going to do it? So if you're going to go buy, a TV, you're probably not going to buy if you're buying a TV every month, there's something wrong. You've got issues we've got to worry about, or I don't know why you're breaking so many TVs, or why you need walls full of TVs, but you're probably not buying a TV every month, right? On the other hand, if you're buying a cup of coffee, you might buy that every day. It's probably a lot of money to spend on coffee, or you might buy it once a week or something like that. And so you can start thinking about, this is how much I can get from a person, and this is how many times I can get it. What we call that is customer lifetime value. And so if you can get a customer, how long do you keep that customer? And you can think about this again in the nonprofit sense. If I donate to an animal shelter, that animal shelter is going to keep sending me responses of saying, hey, we've got this going on, would you like to participate again, would you like to donate again? And that's good practice, but it's also I showed I cared about the animal shelter. And so they know there's a connection there, and so they might reach out again. We do the same thing as part of my job with what I do with Young Life, is finding people who donated to us before and going back and say, hey, you cared about this, you probably care about it again. And I can start to think about and think, how much can I make from this one person? And I can start doing that math, where I start thinking, okay, this is what my revenue might look like. One other tool we've got is thinking, okay, I've talked to one person, they said they might do this. How many people in this area are like that? Is this just, if you came talk to me, I might just be one weirdo. But did you talk to a few other people and you start to see, oh, this is the typology, this is the group of people that kind of look or act like this? Or maybe I'm going to put a restaurant someplace. How many people go by that area? How many people live in that city? If you're going to put something down in OTR down in Cincinnati, you get a lot more foot traffic than if you put something out by me in the suburbs of Westchester. And so thinking about where you're going to put something, what kind of people are going to come around, and what that might look like, that's another way you can factor that in. Now the other side of it is thinking about how much do things cost. And honestly, this is the easier part. But thinking about how much things cost is going through and saying, okay, there's the practical stuff. When I'm building something, there's materials. We call this cost of goods sold, or COGS. And so I want to think I got to charge more for this than I actually input. But I got to charge enough more. I'd rather think about what people value. But the and what I'm charging versus what it costs also needs to pay for the lights, needs to pay for the space, needs to pay for the people that I might employ. All those things factor in. And it's not complicated math, but it's a matter of thinking through all those details to put those together. Now, those are the big picture items. I want to give you a couple examples of how this might work out. I alluded already to my friend Jason Robichaux is his name. He told me when I first met him, he's like, I'm an artist. I'm like, I've never met an artist before. Like, I've never met someone who was like an adult that said they were an artist. And he's like, I do sports art. And I'm like, I don't know what sports art is. And so this is one of the things, he's got a bunch of these. You can go on, I'll leave this up afterwards, we can talk through it, but like, so I don't know how well you can see it. This is one of his more recent ones. He does a lot of things like this, where he'll take a lot of images from newspapers, or not newspapers anymore, sorry, I'm old. He'll take things from pictures he'll see online of different people, and he'll put them together in a background, and he's painted a lot of these things. He sells the prints. He sold prints online. He initially made all his money selling these. He worked for the Houston Rockets organization. He's from Texas, and he loves Duke, so if you go on his website, you'll see a lot of those things. But he'll spend a long time making a lot of these different artwork, and then he'll sell these, usually the original paintings, to like Coach K, who used to be the basketball coach at Duke. He's got a painting hanging in his house that Jason painted for him that I think he sold for $30,000 or $40,000. And then I can't remember where this really changed for him, but for him, what he found, and this is one of the things that happens, is accidentally he had made a painting. I can't remember which one it was. I don't think it was LeBron. I think it was a Kentucky one that he made, and one of the Kentucky players got the painting or the image for Christmas, put it on Instagram, and immediately Jason got like overnight 1,000 orders for the printout of this painting that he had made. And he's like, oh, so that's how I should make money. Because he was doing these paintings, but they take a long time, and he didn't know exactly, they weren't always commissioned, so he didn't know whether people would want to buy them or stuff like that. But he learned, he's like, wait, if I can do this and get somewhat of an online presence, and get it in the hands of the right people, I can make a whole bunch of money selling just the posters, the printouts, to fans of these people. And so he kind of grew over time. I've had other people who've gone smaller scale stuff or things that are not, this is my closest friend who's done more of an artistic type of project. But I had a student who, they were having trouble feeding them and their kid, and they started doing crock pot meals. You guys know what crock pot is? Like, you throw it all in, let it sit all day. And so they started making those. They're like, we have other friends who said they want to do the same thing. So they started a business where they just took orders, had a little menu, and said, we'll drop off a frozen crock pot meal that you just drop in, turn on the crock pot, and leave. And it'll be ready when you get home. And you can order so many per month or whatever. And they started doing that just around Cincinnati. And they started off just in their kitchen, and they realized they needed a bigger kitchen, so they found a new place to go do that. And then they started to do delivery and things like that. And they learned over time, oh, these things work, these things don't. We can do drop-offs on Sunday, and that works for everybody. But some people don't have enough room in their fridge for all these things that we're dropping off. So now we might have to do drop-offs 2 times a week or things like that. And so they grew slowly over time. But they started with a problem that fit for them, and then they found out other people had the same issue. And you can do that same thing. I've got one other student of mine has a company that, it's hard to describe what they do, but basically they take all our social data and let people know what's going on in an area by aggregating it all and pulling off everything you can pull off publicly available data and servers and things like that from Instagram and all that stuff. And so that they know about mobility and how people move throughout a city during the day and what that looks like. All these things are small problems or big problems in different areas and different ways people put them together. But the trick of it is, sorry, I'm running out of time. This is my problem. It's a shorter time frame. We're going to be done in 1 minute? Okay.
3, it's fine.
Okay. So here's the thing. Starting with a problem is easy to start with a problem. Finding the right problem, once you have it, then you have to find the solution. And I want to give you a couple quick tips for finding solutions with brainstorming. So a lot of times we say brainstorming, everybody thinks it's nice and easy, and that's fine. Brainstorming, freewheeling, that's great. But a couple of quick tips I would give you is when you've got a problem, when you know what the problem is, you talk to people and you want to figure out what the solution might be, you're going to have time where you might iterate and you might change things over time as you see what works. But to start with, thing 1 is say, remove all monetary barriers. In other words, imagine you had all the money in the world. Imagine you're Jeff Bezos or whatever other rich person you want, and you want to solve that problem. You have all the money in the world, and write down like 5 or 6 solutions. Then go the opposite way. Imagine you have no money. out as many solutions as you can with no money. Some of them are gonna be terrible, don't get me wrong, but that's the whole idea of coming up with ideas, is that some of them are terrible, and some of them are great. So you do all the money in the world, no money. Then another one I like to do is imagine the legal solutions. So if laws did not apply and I could do whatever I wanted, what solutions would I come up with for that problem? And then the other one I like to do is imagine you had superpowers. Pick whatever crop of superpowers you want to have. How would you solve the problem if you had those superpowers? Do 4 or 5 solutions for each of those. And if you do that, no money, all the money in the world, superpowers, illegal, what you start to do is make your mind break out of the patterns you've got set of saying, well, there's no coffee shop, I should make a coffee shop. Yeah, maybe. But thinking about what's the real problem underlying things and what can I do to solve it, you want to get more ideas on the table. Then you can take those 20 ideas and say, okay, this one said I should rob a bank, but that just gets me the more money one. That's not very helpful. But this one says, if I could have a bunch of people I didn't have to pay to work here, but could just hold them at gunpoint, make them work. It's like, all right, so I can't do that. But is there another way? Is there a way I could get volunteer labor for this? If I'm running an animal shelter, maybe I can. If I have a cause people care about, maybe it is, it won't work unless I have more people who are willing to work for free. How can I structure this in a way that that makes sense? Maybe I partner with a local school, and I have a whole bunch of people at the local school come over and do a research project for me. And they do that on a regular basis. I don't know. But so you start with those type of ideas, and you work your way back to something that will work. And you start saying, okay, if I had all the money in the world, I'd pay a bunch of people to do stuff for me. I can't do that. What can I work back to find? But it gives you a wider breadth of solutions that way. Does that make sense? So those 4 were all the money in the world, no money, something illegal, or if you had superpowers. But you can come up with other ways to just kind of bend and mold your mind and think about things differently. So I'm 2 minutes over. I apologize. And if you have questions, I'll hang out here. I don't know what you guys do.
We can take a few minutes for any questions that you have.
What kind of teacher exactly are you? Is it management, is it business?
Yeah, I'm in the management department, so I teach most of the business majors could take my course. I currently teach their capstone course. But in the business school at Miami, in Oxford, everybody will go through some entrepreneurship courses at the start to do some of the similar stuff to what we're talking about here.
So with your course, do you teach or were you in, like, did you take Lean Six Sigma?
I'm aware of Lean Six Sigma. There's a lot more stuff in entrepreneurship called Lean Startup. It's kind of the same idea of Lean Six Sigma and things like that. But yeah, operations students take my class too, and they do Six Sigma stuff as well.
I know this might be a blunt question, but what got you into business?
I'll give you the honest answer. When I was in college, I didn't know what I was going to major in, and they had really comfortable chairs. And that's not a good way to pick a major. I would not recommend that. But truth be told, when I look back on my life and I think about when I was your age, I was working at a golf course, a couple of golf courses. I worked at McDonald's. I worked a lot of places. I just sit there being like, I think that could be better. I think that could be better. And I found that with every business I went. Like, I've literally not had a job I didn't like. So like, I worked at McDonald's, worked at Arby's, I worked at all these fast food places. I enjoyed all of them. And so that made me realize, like, to me, business is a game. I like games, and it's like, you just gotta figure out the different games.
And you like comfy chairs.
And I like comfy chairs, amen.
All right, let's give it up for our guest speaker.
And look, if you do have questions, I'll hang out here. I don't know how quick you gotta run, but you've got my email in the back here. Shoot me an email if you've got anything. I'm happy to help if I can.